What's up, guys? Tambo here with your Week 6 core report. It's an exciting time to be a Run Pure Sports member as we parlay another big week of winning with the start of the NBA season. Here's a recap of last week. No sports were off limits for winners this past week. Relay 20 hit for $8K on the NASCAR slate. Brad Combe won $5K in an MLB playoff slate. Max Hankins gave a preview of what members can expect, shipping for $21,000 in NBA preseason. BigT had another big week, hitting for over $37,000 in CFB. For the NFL main slate, GK 2400 won over $10K on FanDuel, while our guy Locks shipped an NFL Live final seat. But the biggest wins came on Monday Night Football, when the top of the leaderboard was littered with RPS logos again. JSU led the way with his core plays featuring Captain Austin Eckler and Justin Herbert and Joshua Palmer in the flex. His winning lineup was topped off with Russell Wilson and Dustin Hopkins, as well as low-owned $200 Greg Dulcich, who was talked up big on our free Monday Night Football Showdown show by special guest Chris Rando.
He's fast. He runs like a 4.7 40, and he can actually play the slot. He gives very difficult matchup situations. He's fast. He's got hands. Don't be surprised tonight if maybe he's out there in the mix and, he gets, a few catches and, who knows what happens.
This is your weekly reminder to head on over to our YouTube page and hit subscribe to access all of our great free content. Our guy Johnny AirPods wasn't the only one repping RPS at the top, shipping for over $50K. Matt Attack Lax ran the same lineup twice, shipping for over $95,000. Phil Mike's Bra also shipped for $10,000, while Nuggets hit for $14,000. Now is the time to join us. Head on over to runpuresports.com and sign up for a membership today. Again, all sports are included for one price, and NBA starts this week. You won't want to miss out when our team gets hot during hoop season. Remember, if you're not winning with us, you're watching us win. Till next time, let's keep running pure.
What's going on, everyone? AP over here at Run Pure Sports, bringing to you once again the lineup building show with our partner SaberSim. I'm here with my guy Jordan. Jordan, what is going on, my man?
A little bittersweet being on here today. I know we had a couple issues with the app right before NBA lock last night. So I'm excited to be on here today, talking a little bit of NFL Showdown, maybe talk a little bit of NBA main slate. But I do want to just kind of acknowledge and apologize one more time for any issues anybody faced last night with the app. We had a small bug that came up in the update we pushed on Monday that led to issues yesterday. We've already done a lot of work. The team was working pretty late last night, early this morning, fixing those, making sure that doesn't happen again. So again, my apologies to anybody watching that had issues with SaberSim right before lock last night. Should be a better experience moving forward. And we've already done a lot to avoid that happening again. So, but either way, we've got football tonight and we've got basketball tonight. It's the best time of the year for DFS, in my opinion. So I'm excited to talk a little strategy here.
Yeah, we do have a lot of sports going on tonight. We got two awesome NBA games. We're going to talk about that for a little bit. We also have a really interesting showdown slate in the NFL streets. 500K up top on DraftKings. I mean, monster prize pools. So I do want to hit on both sports, NFL tonight, and then we haven't done an NBA show yet, so I do want to dive. It's 2-game slate, but I do think it's a really interesting slate when you look at pricing. We already got to look at the Lakers and everything, so I got a lot of takes there. So let's start with the NFL game tonight. These Thursday games have been, I don't even have a word to describe them. And then tonight, when you look at some of these optimal builds that we've seen in the Cardinals year to date, their slates that they've been in, like I like to go back and look at what the optimals were, and then also the Saints with all of the injuries that they've been dealing with. I mean, we have a defense in the kicker already. In the captain already. We have a kicker, Young Hoku, in their first game. He was optimal in the captain spot. We have Taysom Hill. He was obviously optimal in that game against the Seahawks where he went nuts. And then on the Cardinals side, we're coming off a game where, The kickers were in play, obviously. The defenses were in play. Got a couple wide receiver ones, quarterback. So it's going to be really interesting. Let's do what we always do. Let's bring up SaberSim, Jordan.
Yeah.
And what we like to do is we like to run kind of a base. I always call it my baseline build. I'll let you talk about it though. Talk to the people about what we're doing with our baseline build.
Yeah, so I think this is the best way to get started when you're building with SaberSim for any slate, right? For NFL Showdown, what this base build is going to be, you open up the build settings. We're not going to touch anything. We're not touching any projections or exposures for this first one here. We'll just use default settings. I'm going to adjust this here to give us 50 builds and 1,500 lineups. And
we'll do the cache settings, right?
Oh yeah, we can do let's do the cache.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing lately. I love the cache settings. And actually the builds are interesting when you use this. So like if you are building like just a cash lineup, or if you're in a double up or whatever in showdown formats, I do like a lot of what I like the lineups that are produced from this. They appear to be pretty optimal. I already ran one earlier this morning, so it should look very similar to what we're seeing here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I forgot about that. So yeah, what we're getting here, right? These are just the cash optimals, right? The highest projected lineups you can build. The lineups that, a lot of people are using other optimizers out there are going to run into quite a bit, the stuff that other tools are going to build. So I like to pull this up, take a look at what kind of captains I'm getting, what type of constructions I'm getting. AP, you just mentioned this has become a pretty big part of your process. What are you looking for when you're running the first cash build?
Yeah, I like to see, obviously driven by projections there. I like to see kind of the context of what the build looks like. Are we getting a playmaker in the captain spot? Are we getting something funky like a kicker or defense in the captain spot? I like to see if we're getting a quarterback there in the captain spot. Now, my preference in tournaments, I want a lot of upside at my captain position in showdown formats. And so that is what I'm going to look at, right off the bat. And here we are seeing Chris Olave there. So I do like to see that. Alvin Kamara there too, Benjamin. We're getting the player. I like to look at it just to kind of establish like a baseline of what your standard build is going to be for the night, or what the industry is going to be doing.
Yeah.
And then so here we're looking at this right now. Olave, Rondale Moore, playmakers. That's what we want. At least that's what I want. Is that going to be the chalky path tonight? Potentially, if that's what the optimizer is giving us. Now we can use this information to find different ways to get different relative to the field. So I just like to establish that baseline, and then I like to dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think looking at the captain exposure is great. One other thing that you can do that I think is kind of cool here is add in like a percentile to your columns. So you could say like, let's look at the 99th percentile here, and we'll add this in. And we can see, are there any guys that have a high percentile, a high 99th percentile outcome that aren't showing up in the captains, right? Like, so the guy with the third highest upside on the slate, according to SaberSim right now, is DeAndre Hopkins, and he's not showing up in almost any cash optimal. So right away, it might be a little bit of a way to get different if people are flocking towards Chris Olave or Rondale Moore, guys with a little bit more. Obviously Hopkins coming back from suspension, not totally clear what his role is going to be tonight. Maybe that's a play that people are a little afraid to play at captain, a guy that in the Sims has a lot of upside here. So could be another way to look at that.
I say it each and every week. We want to like these Thursday night games. I can't even remember who played last Thursday. I just remember it was a brutal game.
Yeah.
We got to see production tonight. The Saints are beat up in their secondary. No Marshawn Lattimore. I think their other stud safety or cornerback is out also. Hopkins should be rested, we don't know what his role is going to be, but we do know that back in the day, one of Kyler's favorite targets to go to, we do know he's a target monster type of guy. So now you have more of a deep threat, Rondale Moore. You also have D Hop, who is more of a target share monster. And Arizona, they've been struggling on the ground. Like James Conner hasn't been good. Benjamin, I don't think he was like that good. So it really sets up to benefit. Like I think if we get a normal game, which we have not gotten a normal game at all on these slates, it really sets up well for D Hop, for Rondale Moore, for Kyler Murray, for Zach Ertz, the passing game there. And then the kicker is kind of on paper who I like, with the injuries that the Saints are dealing with. And then on the Saints side, man, there's so many interesting things. Starting like with Taysom Hill is always the exciting point that people like to talk about, someone that we can look at in showdown formats. Really going to depend on his price, really going to depend on his ownership. Andy Dalton, I can't really play him. So, I mean, we're looking at Chris Olave, we're looking at Alvin Kamara. So, like, when I think of kind of, on the top of my head, just on paper, what I view if we get a normal game script being kind of the optimal path, it is playmakers from both sides. And then a one quarterback build. So on the surface, I'm not going to play Andy Dalton. I would rather have Kyler Murray. And so when I'm just thinking through it, or we could potentially see like a zero QB build here, pan out too, if the kickers come into play, or if the defense is here come into play, which has happened multiple times this year. But I would definitely start by setting some rules around it, limiting to one defense, limiting to one quarterback. Like, I don't know if I want to go Kyler and Dalton. Actually, Dalton for me is probably just a pure fade. There's just too many vultures there for him. And so I just can't get there. But what do you think about that? Like on the surface?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, is it going to be the third week in a row where we kind of play the offenses and hope we get some scoring, and then Thursday Night Football shows up again and it's 12-9? But
it's crazy. So like this Cardinals team, they're still averaging like 74, 75 plays per game, which is way up there as far as pace of play goes. But they've been so inefficient on yards per play. They've been so inefficient, I believe, on third downs and in the red zone. And so it's one of those things where we could see it flip at any point in time. And when it does, we are going to get a ton of points. And man, the Saints, these games, look at the last few games. The Bengals, while they started slow against the Saints team, they got it going. Obviously, Jamar Chase had a monster game. So, oh man, I got to hold my tongue here. But I kind of like the overs here. I kind of like points. And so, yeah, Jordan, I'm with you. I got to go back to the points narrative. Hopefully it doesn't own me again. But, I think ownership, maybe people are going to be more hesitant to do it, especially after, the game that the Cardinals just had, how bad they looked. Maybe they go against it. Maybe it helps us to get a little bit more unique tonight. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and I think as the more and more we have these terrible Thursday night games, the more people are just going to start playing the kickers and the defenses anyway. So I mean, if we've got an angle here, I say we take it and hope we get a more exciting game here.
What's the chat? We got 150 watching, which is awesome. We appreciate all you guys watching. I'm really curious. It's like, are we all going? But like Jordan, I don't know if I'm crazy or not, but maybe these Thursday night games are just turning us all crazy. Luckily, we don't have to deal with Russ Wilson. I can't, if we get him on another primetime slate, I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to go all in against him. And then it's like the second that happens, it's just going to own me. And so in the second I turn against it, like turn against my strategy, going away from these playmakers and stuff, it's going to own me. So I'm going to double down. I'm going to stick with it. Rondale Moore, Chris Olave. I mean, we got good guys too. I mean, we don't know, like you said, we haven't seen D-Hop in a while, but man, I don't know. I would bet on the talent there, especially when you factor in the Saints secondary and how, what's it? I can't remember the other guy's name. I know Lattimore's out, but he hasn't even been their best guy. I know their safety or cornerbacks out as well. So I know the chat can help us out with that, but let's see. So, talk me through this. Did you set any rules in there?
Yeah. So I'm kind of going along as you were talking here. So I did say max one defense, right? So we throw real quickly just to show people how this works. You open up your lineup rules, and we created a new group rule here. So it's called a group rule. And then in the actual rule logic, basically what we just said is no more than one from both defenses at captain. I don't even know if you want to play the defenses at captain, but both defenses at captain, both defenses at flex. So we'll get max one defense here showing up. I also just X'd out Andy Dalton for you in the captain and flex. I think we can at least see what the builds look like with a fade there.
Check this out. Here are the optimal captains. So they've obviously played 6 games. Here are the optimal captains in Cardinal games year to date. Kyler Murray against the Seahawks, if you can believe that. It was a 9-19 game, and Kyler Murray, and they lost, and he was optimal. It was Seahawks defense, Jason Myers, Zach Ertz, Kenneth Walker, Cardinals defense. I mean, absolute insane build. Not the route that we're going to go. I mean, there was a lot. I mean, I can't believe there wasn't a touchdown. I don't believe in that game. Just insane. Maybe one. And then Jalen Hurts, Marquise Brown, Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes. So I am definitely siding with playmakers here. I like the quarterback would be Kyler Murray. I'm definitely never playing Andy Dalton in there. And then I think it's Olave. I think it's Hopkins. I think it's Rondale Moore. And I don't think we want any of the running backs in the captain. That's kind of where I'm at. I think you could even leave Zach Ertz maybe in there as well.
Yeah. So, and I think the best way to do this, right, if we've got a captain pool that we kind of want to roll with, is to just set this before the build, just get these guys in there. So you can see, then we'll get the lineups that we're expecting a little bit more post build here. So anything else that you want to set before this, or maybe take a build here and see how things are looking?
Yeah, let me look. So Olave, the tight end. What's Taysom Hill's price for in the flex?
In the flex,
he's such a weapon. Like he's going to be used. He's going to be used in the red zone.
He's 7'2".
He's 7,200. Oh, I mean, God, that price is just ridiculous. The price is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the thing with him, it's like touchdown or bust. You probably need more. You need more than that, if anything. So, but we did see, upside. So I wouldn't remove him. And
I think
I'd probably just leave him in there. Let's run it. I like these settings that we have set up.
So now what we're going to do, we're going to run this on the GPP settings, and this is going to do what I was kind of talking about before, where we're going to go into the simulations we have for this game, build a lineup for each individual sim using the rules and the player pool that we've kind of created here. And we can start to see how these actual optimals are looking. So and this is where the big advantage is of using a tool like SaberSim for NFL Showdown, is you're not starting with the averages and trying to kind of come up with the game scripts yourself or figure out if it makes sense. You're just going directly to the source, going to the game sims, building those optimals for the ways that the game could play out, and seeing what the lineups look like from there. So we'll give this build a second to wrap up and see how things are looking.
Now, I will say, if you've been someone that's been an ultra contrarian out there, and on these Thursday night games, let's just say you have fully embraced the volatility that we're seeing, and it's like anything could happen. Kicker captain, defense captain, double defense, defense captain, running back with the opposing QB, or vice versa. I mean, continue on with it. These Thursday night games have been an absolute disaster. So, like, continue on with it. I get stubborn, and that could be kind of a flaw in my process, but I'm going to continue to jam in these playmakers. At some point, we're going to see a decent Thursday night game. Could be tonight. I mean, I think, what's the most surprising outcome? I don't think any of us would be surprised if we saw a shitty game tonight. I think we'd be more surprised if we saw a good game with offense. So I kind of like betting on that. And I do like what we're seeing here in these 5 cat. Walk us through what we're seeing here, Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, so looks like a pretty good spread of the captains here. One thing that I think can be kind of cool too is just looking at how many lineups. So this is just your top 50, right? So top 50 in the build sorted by Saber score here. You can go and look and see like who's actually showing up most frequently in the pool. I mean, a name that, just for example, that I still kind of find myself wanting to get to is DeAndre Hopkins here, showing up a lot in the pool. We're only getting 2 lineups out of 50 that have him in there. And that was my favorite play that was jumping out to me when we were looking at the cash build. So if we wanted to go ahead and get a little bit more Hopkins in there, just as an example here, we can bump up his min exposure, say 30%. We'll sort through that pool of 1,500, get a little bit more Hopkins in that top 50 there, all in just a couple clicks. So there was actually a question in the SaberSim channel earlier today from Naj here, and said, how do I get more of a player without force feeding him in? What's a good number to use for exposure? And I think that's going to be the easiest way to do that. I think if you're unsure of what number to get to, I think this number can be kind of a helpful like guideline of like, how much exposure should I get to if I want Hopkins? Well, he's showing up in 20% of my optimals. So maybe if I want to get like over a little bit on that, maybe I get to 40%. If you want to be kind of even with that number, maybe you're staying at closer to the 20% number. But all of these lineups are going to be viable together. You can really kind of whatever feels right about your risk tolerance there.
Another thing too is obviously keep an eye on news up to lock. Chris Olave was dealing with a concussion, something that they're obviously taking very serious right now. I don't know if he's questionable or if he's just a full good to go. Should have had that information up, but you never know. Sometimes these guys get banged up or, if they go through warmups. So keep an eye, because if for some reason he were to, if you want to get even more contrarian, Traquan Smith looked to be that second guy. You also have Marquez Callaway too, that I would look at, or Alvin Kamara, I think would come into play. It was just crazy. These Saints games get crazy. Like, we saw Mark Ingram break off a couple runs. Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill. There's so many different pieces. I feel more comfortable with the Arizona side. So I was looking at some of the builds that are right there. I like some of those onslaught builds too.
Yeah.
Where you can kind of go in on these pieces from the Cardinals that we feel pretty good about and limit our exposure, like that one with Chris Olave at the captain, Alvin Kamara in there. I think that's interesting. And I think the more I think about it, and we got it, okay, so the crew is going to come on later today, the Print Factory Showdown Edition, Tambo, Big T, JSU, and they're going to talk about it. And we got the Taysom Whisper on, and so we'll have to hear Big T's thoughts if he's on Taysom tonight. I would even consider bumping his projection just because it's a full. So, like, what would be the best way to do this, Jordan? Bump his projection, then keep like a cap on him. Like, what if we bumped him to like a touchdown plus, some extra production there, like 10.5 or something like that. But we put like a 25% cap on him because we don't want more than 25%. Like, we want him to hit all the builds up to a max of like 25% or 20%. Would that be the best way to do that if you're trying to do that? Because I do try to do that in NBA with some of these values. And actually, I was going to talk about that when we get to NBA, kind of like with the Spurs situation yesterday with the Pacers, late news. I was trying to cap some of those chalk plays to be a little bit more in line with the field, actually. And I was having a difficult time doing that.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple different ways you can do that. I mean, first things, we're getting about 8% Taysom on the flex here of our 1,500. So we could just come in here in the build and just see, like, what happens if he's projected for 11 points? Do we start getting some exposure to him there? And it looks like we're not really. Then maybe in that case, we go ahead here and just say, hey, we want to get some exposure. We want 25% like that. We can go in and start kind of like looking and seeing what these actual builds look like. If, maybe we want to take a big stand here, right? Maybe we decide we're going all in on Taysom Hill or something like that. Then maybe it's a better approach to go back to the home screen, update that projection. So we have that actually in there in the sim itself and start from there. Cause we'll go ahead.
It's a really interesting point tonight because no one's going to play him at his price. Okay. I don't think anyone is. And he's getting very valuable touches. Like, they're using him in really creative ways like that. Like, I don't want to admit it, but there was a slate where I played Andy Dalton. I think it was because he was like 5K, something like that. And I was like, it was the game Taysom went off for like 3 touchdowns and how they were using him. Obviously you need a few things to happen. You need the game to be high scoring. You need the environment to be weird. Maybe a Thursday night slate is exactly what we need for Taysom to do his thing. The other thing is, I would set a rule. Like, I would definitely set a rule where if you're playing Alvin Kamara, I probably wouldn't have Taysom. And then, and vice versa, because there's been times where I played Alvin Kamara and then Taysom vultures at the goal line. So that's another thing to consider too. So at his my main point though is at his price, there's no way people play him. And in showdown formats, anything can happen. Like, anything can happen. Mm-hmm. We've already seen him have a game where he broke the slate. He outscored almost every quarterback on the entire slate. So, I mean, you can't sit here and say that he's like not in play. Yeah, is it like a very small likelihood of that happening again? Sure. But it's showdown, 500K up top. You want to be that guy in that spot. So I don't think it's out of the question to play him on the slate.
Yeah. And I mean, it's weird to say, but like in the list of players that have 2-3 touchdown scoring upside, Taysom Hill's on that list for these two teams. So for that reason alone, I mean, I think it's at least an interesting angle, especially if we do end up with Chris Olave being out. I mean, I could see them really leaning on him a little bit more, especially in the red zone opportunities.
He cleared concussion protocol, but
okay.
That would just add to the randomness of this slate. So which I like.
Yeah, so I mean, I did while you're talking, run a quick build here. We bumped Taysom Hill up to 11. We're getting 10% now in our pool of 50. We're getting almost 25% in the entire big pool of 1,500. So a lot more flexibility there. If we wanted to then make that a big stand or plant a flag there, a lot easier to get a lot more exposure to him now with that higher projection. So I think that's kind of the way I would think about it: is look at that projection and honestly see if that matches up with the way you think his average actually is. If it's not, give it a little boost and go with it from there.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit. I do want to hop into, do you have any final thoughts with NFL? I do want to hit on the NBA slate tonight, 2-game slate, but we haven't done a show yet for NBA. We'll have to find a time to, like, on a Wednesday, maybe we'll bump the show up one of these days to like a Wednesday or something so that we can focus on a big NBA slate. But let's start everyone off kind of, like we do each and every year, your basic build from the start. Like, how, if someone was very new coming into SaberSim, how would they start their build with NBA?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, kind of going to be a similar process for most sports here. I think just to get an idea of how things are looking for the slate, for that particular slate, what I would do is come in here and I didn't mention this as much with the showdown because it doesn't matter as much here, but tell us what contest you're playing, right? Like, your strategy is going to be different if you're playing a single entry, trying to beat out 500 other lineups, than if you're playing the big 150 and trying to beat out, however many it is tonight, 150,000 additional lineups, right? And you can actually see how these factors that we take into consideration when we're building the lineups change given that contest here. So tell us what contest you're building for tonight. I mean, I guess let's assume, that we're building for a larger field contest. I think that's a little bit more fun here. Tell us how many lineups you need. I like to increase this pool up to 1,500, so I have a lot of lineups to work with. And then just start new build, right? And what we're doing here is we're building GPP-ready lineups that are looking into correlation. They're looking into ownership. They're looking into upside of these guys and building lineups that have a high chance of success. And you can kind of get an idea of going in here, same way we do for Showdown, and seeing who are we getting to, right? So the way I like to use this is, who am I getting a lot of exposure to? The leverage column, I think, can actually be really useful for NBA. Who are my biggest stands, right? Who am I getting the most over the field on? And who are my biggest fades, right? We can see we're kind of low here on some of that Lakers value, a little bit low on Harden, who might be chalkier tonight. And that's kind of how I like to start by getting an idea of just what is SaberSim like on this slate? What do we don't like? And building out a strategy from there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. What did LeBron James come in at? Because the thing is when you look at their prices, like Anthony Davis, 8,600, LeBron James,
he's
9,300.
Yeah.
Got to be popular. One other one that I'm really curious on is Drew Holiday, 7.9K. I kind of think he could be like a difference maker on this slate. When I first ran some builds, he was flying under the radar. What I mean by that is, like, I was getting, like, on my first base run, like 10 to 15% of him, which is really low for a guy with his type of usage. No Chris Middleton. He's going to be a primary guy there. Obviously, Giannis is definitely the guy. But what I'm looking for on these two gamers for me are who's a guy with upside in that mid range, who's going overlooked, and Drew Holiday looks to be one of those. And the reason is because, look, Kawhi Leonard, a different position, obviously, but Kawhi Leonard, 8.4, Paul George, 8.9, both phenomenal plays. LeBron James, 9.3. It's kind of the LeBron show right now, and we know this Lakers team is not good defensively, even though, like, if you look at the pieces that they have, they're trying to be a better defensive team, but it's just not there. So you have players that once were good defensively that didn't look good at all versus the Warriors. 1 game sample size against the defending, world champs, obviously. But then you have Anthony Davis, again, underpriced there. And then you got, it's a really interesting 2-game slate, where if it's perfect if you have stands like a stand like Drew Holiday. I'm not saying that's my stand. I'm just saying, if that is your stand out there, a guy like that, I think you're going to be able to get overweight on. I think Joel Embiid too. I think Joel Embiid potentially, maybe I'm wrong, but at 10-3 with AD8, you can't play all of these guys, and they're all really good plays. But what you can do is get overweight on all of them, or on one of them, or multiple of them, and then MME formats. And I think that's what's going to create your edge here today. The other thing too is like, man, the Clippers are deep. They have so much depth. So I'm not sure if I'm going to do like, I like to be careful with my rules on 2-game slates. Like on bigger slates, like we had yesterday, I will set rules. Like I would have a rule of LeBron James or Anthony Davis, not both, Kawhi Leonard or Paul George, not both. But on a 2-game slate, I don't think we can do that because we don't want to limit, the different possibilities out there, especially with guys that command so much usage on their team. My one concern is this Lakers team is deep. They're going to be good. They have so many different pieces. And the thing is, like, I think that the first game is going to be more competitive. So do we want to make some adjustments there? Maybe set some rules or add some bias to this, like we like to call it.
Yeah. So I do want to just kind of show a kind of a cool rule that you can do for NBA. So I know, that one comes up all the time where you don't want to really stack like 2 of the same studs from the same team. You can do that in a way that will kind of make all those rules for you automatically all at once. And again, on a 2-game slate, I'd be careful with this because obviously very easy for, LeBron and AD to both be optimal together on a 2-game slate. But if you wanted to make a rule that kind of captured all of that at once, we can go in here, we can create a group rule. And we're going to call this an automatic. And what we're going to do is we're going to say use no more than one primary player. We're going to say no more from one primary player on the same team, right? So this group by team. And I'm going to add a stat requirement here. So I'm going to say this rule only applies for players that meet a certain stat threshold. And in this case, the stat threshold is going to be that their projection, let's say, is greater than 40, right?
Ooh, so I like that.
We can go ahead and do this here. And then I'm going to save this as a manual rule, right? Because manual rule is going to let me go in and be able to look and edit these. So now let's go in and look at these, right? So in this case, we've got, actually not a good example because the Bucks only have 1, but on the Clippers, use no more than 1. I bet
if you changed it to like 37.5 or what's
if we
Drew
want
Holiday's?
If we want Drew Holiday, so he's 36. So yeah, we can do 36. That'll work.
This is really cool for like bigger slates. I don't know if it applies, tonight, but that is, and what you're trying to do, if you're playing a large field tournament with NBA, unless you get like a 3 overtime game, it's going to be very difficult for like, you just don't get the correlation like you do in other sports. And so what you're trying to do is capture all of the upside from the different spots on the slate. So I love a rule like this. If I would have known this yesterday, it would have saved me a bunch of time, Jordan, because I went in there and kind of manually picked the player. And actually, I was probably wrong. One that I had was DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, and that backcourt is ridiculous. I don't know if you caught that game, but if you didn't, go and watch that game. They were phenomenal. The Pelicans too. Zion, just an absolute fantasy point per minute beast. Too bad his price was sky high, but I think what you could also do is, let's just say you had a rule like this in place, you could bump that projection up to make sure that the player that you like, in addition to that, is above that rule. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one thing to note, I have this pulled up here. I mean, so we're capturing these correlations into Sims as well. So we're recognizing the fact that LeBron and Anthony Davis here are negatively correlated. In fact, the most 2 negatively correlated on the Lakers. Russ is in there as well as a negatively correlated guy. And we'll pull that into the builds accordingly. But I know, especially when you're trying to take down the largest field contest, you don't want to have any of those negative correlations. So these little group rules can be kind of helpful as a quick way to do that. And, 2-game slate, you probably could have made those manual rules yourself just as easy. But as AP said, 12-game slate last night would have been pretty hard to go through and do that also. Those automatic rules can be quite a bit of a help to do that in a pinch.
If you remember, and if you want to, all right. So like if you want to copy kind of what I do. So I fill out the heat map, and obviously I'm adjusting that, making updates to it each and every day. I have what's in their core play potential people, solid options, elite tournament plays, and tournament fillers, and then fades or under. I literally just go team by team, and I bump up the guys I like, so the bright green, and I bump down, the other guys. And that's kind of how I work things from a base standpoint. So that's how you can use our content as well, and you can use it in here. One thing, too, that I did want to hit on, we're working on a process to where our core plays are going to be more consistently in Saber. So I don't think we have any loaded in there today. I don't know, real quick, could you go back to yesterday's slate and see if I know I believe I had or maybe it was the day before. Actually, yesterday was crazy. So the last 2 game slate that we had on
the opening night slate.
Yeah, opening night.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, you'll see BigT. So show the people real quick kind of how to, if they wanted to pull in, a couple of my core plays, a couple of BigTs.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting feature, and we're working on a process to where we'll have more of the team's core plays up there on a nightly basis.
Cool. Yeah. So one thing to note, if you've done this before, this has changed a little bit with the way that the stacks have changed. So the way that I would recommend doing this now, you can click on the column. So let's say you want to see AP's core here. You can click on this column. It'll bring all those guys to the top. And then what I would do is I would just create a manual group for yourself and just include those guys in there. So you can quickly just 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got them in. Let's say, you want to use 2 players from AP's core, maybe 3 in every lineup or something like that. You can save that rule and boom, you're in business there. Same thing if you wanted to go and add some players from BigT's core as well, create a different rule. Obviously, 2-game slate, you got to be careful that there's salary and positional eligibility to play all these guys together. But you could go ahead here, maybe at least 2 of BigT's, at least 3 of both AP and BigT's core here, build some lineups and see how things are looking.
No, that's really sharp. So let's wrap this up. So a couple things, Jordan. I do think moving forward, we'll find a time to tackle one of these large slates. We'll do it right before our main NBA Hardwood show. So we'll take you all the way up to lock. In the coming weeks, we'll plan that out. We'll do that maybe next week, maybe the week after. We'll look ahead. We'll make sure it doesn't align with a good Thursday night showdown slate. We'll wait for a bad one, and I think that'll be the perfect time to do it. Because these big slates they are a beast to tackle in NBA, and there's some things that you can do to simplify everything, and I think it'd be important for us to break that down. So, any final thoughts, and then we do got to get out of here.
No. I mean, I'm excited to talk about a big slate. I definitely at some point too want to come on and talk a little bit about how to late swap, just because that's a important part of NBA. I think SaberSim makes it really easy, but useful to see somebody walk through it one time before you're trying to do it yourself, right in the middle of the slate. So I'm excited.
Yeah, really good point. That's one feature that we definitely need to show. So we will get it going, get it scheduled to make sure that we do that, because as news hits, it is just it creates such a nice value, such a nice edge. If you are late swapping, if you are rerunning your builds, re-optimizing them, it's definitely going to help you, especially even like we saw yesterday. We saw Miles Turner went out, he fell on a ball boy, sprained his ankle or something, in warm-ups. That was the alleged story. I don't necessarily believe it, since he's a piece that they're trying to move. But late swap is very, very important, and SaberSim has one of the best tools for it. So again, if you haven't yet, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, helps us out a lot. We're running this free each and every week for you. We're focused on NFL, but we are going to start incorporating some NBA stuff into it, since NBA is such an optimizer driven sport. So we do have the Print Factory coming up later today. That is with Tambo, BigT, and JSU. That is, I believe, a member-only show. So make sure that you watch that. It's Taysom Hill night. We got to see what BigT says about Taysom Hill. So I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be very interested with that. Again, thank everyone for watching. If you have any questions, we have a SaberSim channel in Discord. Hit them up or shoot me a DM and we'll handle it. Or if there's anything ever that you want us to cover, shoot me a DM, let me know, and we'll make sure that we cover it moving forward. With that, I'm AP. That's Jordan. Simon, get us out of here.